Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode we're going to be covering Delenn Part 6. And here we go. The end of an age. Rumors soon reached the station that Sheridan died on Zahadum, crashing the White Star into the planet, detonating 2 thermonuclear bombs on impact. For the next week, the Shadows stopped all their attacks. Without their attacks and without Sheridan's driving presence, the Alliance quickly began to unravel. Delenn, Ivanova, and the others are unable to convince the Alliance worlds to maintain their ships in defense of the station, or to launch an attack on Zahadum itself. Angry that the Vorlon ambassador had been ignoring her summons, Delenn insists on meeting with him. The Vorlon meets her in the Zen garden with Lyta Alexander. Delenn asks him to add his voice to hers so that they can put together an expedition to Zahadum. The new Vorlon ambassador refuses, saying that Sheridan is no longer important, and that the Vorlons will do what is required on their own. Afterwards, Lyta meets with Ivanova and the others to go along to Zahadum, sure that she can use her telepathy to scan for Sheridan and to keep the Shadows distracted. Ivanova and Delenn command the White Star to the Shadows' homeworld. Lyta is unable to keep the Shadows occupied for long, and the Great Eye communicates to all on board the ship, speaking to each in the voice of their respective fathers. Luckily, Lenier's preparations allow them to escape, but there's no trace of Sheridan at all. Delenn's sorrow nearly consumes her. Ever since Sheridan left, she began fasting and praying almost non-stop for Sheridan. She maintained hope of his survival after the others were convinced it was impossible. 9 days after his disappearance, Lanier asked Dr. Franklin to speak to her about her fasting. Franklin warns Delenn that while Minbari can normally fast for up to 2 weeks, she is no longer completely Minbari, and her extended fast is starting to harm her. Delenn, however, vows to continue it until she sees Sheridan again. Later, while going through Sheridan's personal effects, Dr. Franklin finds a journal entry Sheridan made 6 months earlier. He decides to share it with Delenn. It was made just after the battle for Babylon 5 independence, and in it, John admits that he is falling in love with Delenn. Emboldened by John's courage, Delenn assembles the Rangers and an entire White Star fleet at Babylon 5. She relays her decision to launch an all-out attack on Zahadum in 1 week. After they gather what strength they can, even if such an attack is a suicide run, the Rangers vow to follow her, even to their deaths. And we'll be right back after this. On the same day Sheridan left for Zahadum, Michael Garibaldi went missing while on patrol in a Star Fury. After a few days, Jakar had gone looking for him, and Marcus Cole immediately then went looking for Jakar. Marcus found him, and together they found a lead on Garibaldi's whereabouts. But Jakar asked Marcus to return to Babylon 5 while he continues on his own. The lead allows Zach Allen to discover Garibaldi is being carried in a transport not too far from the station. With Ivanova away from the station searching for the first ones in a White Star, Delenn is effectively in command of Babylon 5. She authorized Zach to take a squadron and recover Garibaldi. The squadron successfully rescues him and brings him unconscious back to the station for recovery. Meanwhile, word of Delenn's war plans create minor uproar among many of the other races' representatives. She learns from the Bukhari ambassador that several of the other ambassadors are planning an assembly in the Zocalo to protest her actions, believing that they will only stir up the Shadows and lead to more suffering. Delenn refuses to quash the demonstration, though she does insist on showing up to it to defend her actions. The crowd grows restless and angry by her presence, but all fall silent when Captain Sheridan enters the room. From a platform, he explains that he has returned from Zahadum, a feat everyone said was impossible, and that he knows that the Shadows can be defeated once and for all. He calls on everyone to stand with them so they can at last have a victory. All who are present agree to fight by his side. Delenn quickly comes to his side, and the two embrace. Sheridan returned to the station with the help of a mysterious being named Lorian. Sheridan explains to Delenn, Lanier, Franklin, and now an awakened Garibaldi what he learned on Zahadum. The Vorlons are not caught up in a war with the Shadows in a conventional sense, but rather they and the Shadows are two sides of an equation. Both remained behind after most of the remaining first ones left the galaxy, to shepherd and guide the younger races. But their ideologies were diametrically opposed. While at first respectful, they eventually came to blows, beginning a long series of conflicts. As they are talking, Ivanova and Marcus return from their trip with dire news. The Vorlons have amassed a massive armada of several thousand ships, including a couple which are several miles long and capable of destroying entire planets. And they have decided to wipe out anything and anyone who they deemed as being touched by the shadows. As the Army of Light continues to gather its forces to stand against both the Vorlons and the shadows, Sheridan raises the point that the Vorlon ambassador must be removed from the station, as he poses a serious security risk. Working with Lorien, Lyta Alexander, and station security, Sheridan is able to lure the Vorlon into an attack. Delenn insists on going to the area where the trap is set. The new Vorlon ambassador is driven from his encounter suit and tries to attack Delenn. Sheridan comes between them, and with Lorien's help, part of Kosh that was inside of him expels itself and attacks the new Vorlon ambassador, leading to the destruction of both. Sheridan is left near dead for a second time, but once again Lorien revives him, though mentions it's only for a while. Afterwards, Sheridan meets with Delenn privately to explain that Lorien's gift has a drawback. It will only keep him alive for 20 years, no more. Delenn is crushed by the news, but Sheridan brushes it aside. He produces an engagement ring and asks her to marry him, desiring to spend what time he has with her. Delenn joyfully accepts the proposal. The Shadows soon reveal a planet killer of their own, a death cloud destroying entire worlds, just the same as the Vorlons. Lynn here deduces that the Vorlons are on a course that will lead them to Coriana 6, a low-tech world with a shadow outpost and 6 billion inhabitants. Sheridan and the War Council realize that they will have to make a stand at Coriana 6. But Sheridan insists that the shadows must be there. He wants both sides to confront each other. He contacts a White Star, ordering them to allow themselves to be set upon by a shadow armada, so that information can be recovered by the shadows that will lure them to Coriana 6, a task that will only be successful if the White Star allows itself to be destroyed. The crew readily accepts this assignment, bidding farewell to Delenn and Sheridan before successfully going out on the mission. Finally, Delenn and Sheridan on board the White Star 2 lead a fleet of thousands of ships from dozens of worlds to Coriana 6. Along the way, Commander Ivanova contacts them to let them know that she has recently returned to the station after another mission to find the first ones, this time with Lorien helping her. It was successful. Delenn points out to Sheridan that one ship will not make much of a difference and Ivanova does not have to be in that battle. Sheridan insists on telling her to come, as he promised her he would not leave her behind. Soon afterwards, the Battle of Coriana 6 commences. As the Vorlons and the Shadows face off with all the younger races in between, their bitterness and zealotry shine through. The Vorlons telepathically communicate with Sheridan, while the Shadows do the same with Delenn. Both armies appeal to Sheridan and Delenn, telling them that there was no choice but to embrace them and oppose their opposites. However, Lorien uses his powers to allow everyone aboard all younger race ships to see what Delenn and Sheridan saw before pulling them back. The Shadows and Vorlons make one last final appeal, but Sheridan steadfastly refuses both of them. With all his allies standing with him, Lorien explains to the two ancient forces that their task is done, and it is time to depart. Along with the last of the first ones, they all leave the galaxy forever, leaving it to the younger races. The fleet heads home. Delenn and Sheridan enjoy a quiet trip back to Babylon 5, reflecting on how the Third Age has begun. An age where they can at long last stop being afraid of shadows. Despite the Shadow War being over, there was still much work to be done. The Earth Alliance Civil War was still ongoing, and President Morgan Clark declared an embargo on Babylon 5. In addition to the embargo, Clark uses ISN as his personal propaganda machine to slander the station. An ISN crew comes to the station and pleads that they wish to only report the truth. Sheridan and Delenn consent to an interview where they are asked extensively about their relationship, but nothing too offensive. Once the interview airs, however, it is heavily edited to make it appear that Sheridan and Delenn have designs to ultimately conquer Earth. And we'll be right back after this. Delenn faced continued resentment from not only humans but from their own people as well. Once they were aware of her intentions to marry Sheridan, Delenn's clan sent a representative to the station to insist that she come back so they could evaluate the relationship and whether or not they could consent to it. Loyal to her clan and to her people's beliefs, Delenn agreed to go back to Minbari, well aware that if the judgment went against her, it would be the end of her relationship with John. She asked for one final night with him, though she did not explain anything other than the need to return home. Delenn did ask John if they could spend the night together, her third night watching his true face. John agreed, though he sensed something was amiss. Delenn returned to Minbari, where she was called before her clan. They professed concern that she was a threat to Minbari purity by choosing an alien as her mate. They questioned her motives and demanded that she take part in the dreaming, an ancient Minbari ritual where part of a person's memories could be shown to them. The dreaming showed Delenn the days when she met Drakh and first became his aide. She also saw his death and the beginning of the Earth-Minbari War. Delenn was confused at why she was being shown this, until she realized the dreaming wanted her to hear the final words that Drakh said to her, which she could not hear clearly at the time because of her grief. Drakh told her that she was a child of Vorlon. Delenn and Lanier are subsequently able to piece together that after defeating the Shadows 1,000 years before, Vorlon, still partly human, married and had children. Her clan elder admits that Vorlon's descendants now are too numerous to count. This is also the reason why Minbari and humans share souls. Delenn plans on exposing this truth, but fearful that the upheaval it would cause. Her clan elder asks her to keep it hidden and fabricate a story that will allow her to remain with John. Delenn agrees and returns to Babylon 5. John is waiting for her at the docking bay. Shortly after her return, Delenn approaches John and informs him of another tradition she wants for them to observe. While at first exasperated at the thought of yet another tradition, John's attitude changes when she explains that this particular one involves them spending a night discovering each other's sources of pleasure. However, once John discovers it involves several Minbaris, including Lanier, praying in the next room, as well as standing guard should anything become too rough, John is quite put out. She convinces him to go forward anyways. Fortunately, far deep problems soon came to light threatening the Minbari people. Vorlon, another member of the religious caste, soon came to Babylon 5 to relay news about strange raiders attacking an alien race that was part of the Minbari protectorate. Delenn immediately sets out with a small fleet of White Stars accompanied by Vorlon and Lanier to investigate. They soon encounter a small fleet of ships identified as the Drakh. Vorlon admits that he is familiar with them. At gunpoint, he forces Delenn to order her fleet to follow the Drakh ships to a rendezvous point with the Drakh task force. He also insists that they allow an emissary to come aboard. Delenn is immediately unnerved by the strange dark alien that comes aboard. Vorlon explains that he sought the Drakh out and wishes to ally with them against the warrior class, who have become openly hostile to the religious caste in the wake of the Grey Council's disbandment. He relates how the warrior class expelled all religious from the city of Selkar after disabling their personal vehicles, forcing them to walk through a frozen wasteland to the nearest city. Over half of them died on the journey, including Vorlon's family. He explained that the Drakh only wanted a home of their own and could be trusted to protect them against the warrior class. Delenn feigns agreement to consider this proposal, recognizing that the Drakh could only have been allies of the Shadows. Once Vorlon lets slip who she is, the emissary noticeably takes interest. Delenn knows that they will attack as soon as the emissary is clear. Reacting quickly, she orders the fleet to make a running withdrawal. They successfully make it into hyperspace, though one of the White Stars is destroyed and a few others damaged, including her own. Vorlon is killed in the attack. Rather than retreat, Delenn orders the White Stars to return and surprise attack the Drakh task force. They completely annihilate the Drakh carrier and its escorts. And we'll be right back after this. Back on the station, Delenn explains to Sheridan about the Drakh. She also tells him that she has to return to Minbari and will be gone indefinitely. She tells him that this may be for the best. However, as the escalating tensions of the Earth Alliance civil war will force him to be dangerous, and she feels he can do that better if she is not there. Delenn boards a Minbari cruiser controlled by the religious caste. As it heads towards Minbar, she learns that fighting between the castes have broken out at the capital city. Outright war has begun. She contacts Neroon and asks him to come aboard her ship, which he cautiously agrees to. Her own people are suspicious of this move, fearing that she intends for the religious caste to surrender to the warriors. Neroon still maintains some suspicions regarding her ultimate moves as well. Meeting with him privately, she explains that once again she has no intentions to rule as a dictator, but insists that neither caste should be allowed to ascend over the other. She outlines a bold plan that will quickly end the conflict before it can escalate. A plan that will allow both castes to retain honor and give neither the advantage. Neroon agrees to her proposal, remarking at how much they have changed over such a short time. Soon afterwards, however, he is assaulted by one of his officers, who believes he intends for the warrior class to surrender to the religious. The officer is arrested, and Delenn reiterates to her people that neither side can be allowed dominance. Not even an hour later, Delenn learns that Lanier is in the infirmary, critically injured. Neroon's personal surgeons attend him. They are able to stabilize him, though the operation requires the removal of part of his lung. Once he regains consciousness, he explains that he had detected a gas leak in one of the engines and sealed it himself, leading to this condition. Delenn accepts his explanation, never learning the truth about why he did it. Later that night, Lanier awakens Delenn to alert her that Neroon has taken a personal flyer and left the ship, seemingly betraying the alliance forged with Delenn. Delenn weeps as news continues to report the war is heating up. Much of the capital city, which she loves, is in ruins. She admits her feeling of guilt to Lanier, who tries to comfort her by explaining her breaking the council was simply a step in Valen's prophecies. Delenn points out that Valen was not really prophesying, but remembering an event. Shortly thereafter, they arrived on Minbar and began confronting and attending the many injured among the religious caste. Severely outmatched by the warriors, the religious caste is facing a crushing defeat. Delenn alerts the leader of the warriors that the religious caste wishes to surrender to the warriors. She sent this word through Neroon, who arranges for their leader to meet her and the others in the Temple of Varan, an ancient site where leaders of the Minbari were chosen in ancient times. This event is broadcast live across all the planet. Delenn agrees to the surrender, but surprises Shakiri, the leader of the warrior caste, when she announces that the surrender does not mean the religious caste is giving up all their rights to choose a new leadership. She points out that if the old ways were being restored, that the leadership should be chosen as it was before, using the Starfire wheel. Shakiri attempts to avoid this, but Neroon calls him out, saying that he will appear as a coward if he does not step into the wheel with Delenn. Shakiri reluctantly does so with Delenn. As the searing heart of the fire wheel intensifies, Shakiri begs Delenn for them to walk out together. Delenn insists that a true leader must be prepared to die for his people. Shakiri leaps from the wheel to save himself, contrary to the plan she developed with Neroon. Delenn stays inside it, willing to die for her people. Neroon is unwilling to let that happen, however. He enters the wheel and removes it from her, taking the full brunt of the wheel's power himself, which causes his own death. In his last moments, he calls out that his heart belongs to the religious caste. Though severely burned by the wheel, Delenn insists on carrying out the next steps immediately to prevent any future chaos. She reforms the Grey Council, but this time changes the makeup of it. Only 2 members of the warrior and religious caste will be members, while the other 5 will be from the worker class, who previously had always been overshadowed by the other 2, or caught in the middle between their fightings. Delenn does not take a place on the new council, though she still retains her rank of Inthalazah. The brief but bitter Minbar civil war comes to an end, and the rebuilding begins again. Thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. Special thanks to the Babylon Project and all contributors for all information you heard today. Also special thanks to my Patreons. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. And have a nice day. Bye-bye.